mean, do you think that what we're seeing right now, based on your experience, is something that will drag out for a significant amount of time longer?
And just on one thing on the real estate cycles, it seems to me that I'm getting older with shorter memories, but they seem to be quicker. Everything in the world seems to be happening quicker. The cycle for this, the recovery of asset pricing in New York was much faster than I would have ever predicted. The markets are moving, the volatility is moving much quicker than we ever saw. You have less time, so this particular economy we can talk about may drag on with slower growth for quite a while, but the cycles of opportunity seem to be getting shorter. I don't know if you feel that way, but.
Yeah, I agree. The flow of information is just prodigious compared to what it was, in 1980, 84, 85, 86. The internet has changed everything in terms of the speed on how people react, and I think sometimes overreact. I think we find situations where people have overreacted, and we can kind of come in and supply capital. This crisis, though, definitely to me feels different. The sovereign debt crisis feels different to me than even Lehman, which was terrible, probably the worst in the last 30 years, even worse than in 80 to 82. But this one is really tough because you look at Europe, they have 17 different countries in the Eurozone, no central monetary authority but a common currency. That's a prescription you would have thought for disaster, and we are having disaster right now because when countries overspend, the other countries don't want to pay for them. In the United States, we have at least we have a central system that is going to govern that a little bit. But in Europe, they've got to get 17 people to get together and speak different languages and have different views. And that's going to be a really tough agreement to come up with. And how does kind of basically Germany and France decide to save the euro, break the euro up, and that's going to have economic implications for the United States and China because, again, we're much more interlinked than we were in 1982, 83, 84. We're much more interlinked today to the global economy. I'd also say the U.S. has done its part. If we keep letting this deficit persist, it's slowing down activity from business, consumers, because people are very wary. And so this will be a long-term thing if we don't respond to the crisis. And so far, the Congress has not done, in my opinion, a great job of responding to the crisis. We continue to kick a huge can down the road. If you think about it, when we were in school, the deficit crossed in 1982, the national debt crossed $1 trillion. It was a big deal. Yes. Everett Dirksen came out with a big board.
They put it on Times Square, too.
Times Square, $1 trillion.
Right.
And what is it today?
That's the interest cost now.
Yeah. What is it today? It's $14 trillion.
That's the interest cost.
Today, and we're spending $1 trillion excess per year.
Right. No,
so it took 200 years to build the first trillion of national debt. It's taking 1 year to build the same amount. That can't be a good equation for success. Right. I may be missing something, but that's not a good equation for
people. One of my former partners at Goldman said trees don't grow to the sky, and I think what you're seeing is the recognition that these problems can't be kicked forward without a cost to them. You have to ultimately, you have to balance the books at some point, even though they can be funny accounting down there. But I think it's a real issue. I would say back to one thing I wanted to point out about '98, which you alluded to, Kayla. That was, I think, '98. What we saw, what Steve was saying is, in 1998, the Russian debt crisis started. If you remember, long-term capital, Russian debt, and all of a sudden, the liquidity dried up. It was instantaneous. It was like this plague that went around the world. It was really the interconnectivity of the capital markets, information flow, that had been much different even than in 1990. In that 8-year period, a 7-year period, we saw a tremendously more linked economy, global economy. Problems, I would say, one guy said to me, well, what do I care what's going on in Russia? I said, you're going to care. About 2 months later, there was no loans available. But the real estate part of that was a small blip. It really got through that very quickly and almost unscathed. Then we had the dot-com bubble. I don't know if you remember the dot-com, but people say how many eyeballs. And I mean, I would meet people, they say, you're an old dinosaur, you're an old economy, hard assets, no good, they stink, this and that. And we had the 2000s, and real estate prices kind of went down. And then now they would say, I want a hard asset that can't be moved. I know it's there with cash flow and yield. So these cycles, so we went from being the ugliest person at the ball to the darling of the ball. And these cycles can be driven by macroeconomics like that, interest rates and other things. So the pricing of these things had nothing to do with the fundamentals. They had to do with what was going on around us, and it happened much quicker than we would have ever expected, I think.